so let's get started. Byron, another board member came in. I think Byron is here. And Stephen is here. I saw them somewhere. But we've got 2 more board members in the house. There they are, back there. Okay, fantastic. So why are we here today? Well, first, we want to present an overview of what is going on in the cluster for the Douglas cluster. We are also going to, so you're going to see some work that's in very draft mode for the Douglas cluster. But we want your input, we want your thoughts, and that's the reason why we're sitting in kind of this configuration, because this is going to be a conversation today. We want you to join the conversation. We want your input. And so we're going to share with you the strengths and challenges of the cluster as they relate to the cluster's mission, vision, and priorities. And this is draft. I want to stress that. Nothing is final. The ink isn't dry. We need your input as we move forward. And then we're also going to talk about the charter system. What is it, what it isn't, and give you some information. We're going to start with a conversation about local school governing teams. And we're going to talk about that. Next slide. So, we got a couple of working norms. One, we want you to assume good intentions. We want you to listen actively. I also want you to participate fully. That one's not on there, but I'm going to add that for next time. We want you to participate and engage fully. We want you to share the air. We want you to get to know the people that are at your table. Hopefully at your table there's a good mix. If you're sitting at a table with people that you all already know, we'd like for you to potentially move, because the idea is that we're going to engage in really good conversation and dialogue about where we want the Douglas cluster to go. We want you to avoid jargons and acronyms. We're going to avoid jargons and acronyms. We've got a few in the presentation, but I'm going to explain them to you. And then we want to respect our time together and make sure that your phones are on silence. We got a power-packed 2 hours of engaging conversation, dialogue, and content. All right, next slide. So one thing that I wanted to highlight for you is that the 3 work streams around the strategic plan, cluster planning, and charter system is now all coming together. We've been doing this work independently, but it's now time for all of those work streams to now merge. On your tables, there are copies of the strategic plan. These are hot off the press. The board voted and approved the new strategic plan in November. And tonight we've got some copies for you for your review. We were not going to spend a whole lot of time with the strategic plan, but wanted to give you the opportunity to see what the new district's mission and vision are, and some of the key initiatives that the district are working towards. Cluster planning is integral to where we're going as a charter system. What we're doing in each of our clusters is important, and we want to hear from you in terms of where you see your schools, where you want them to be. How do we ensure that your needs are being met? And then finally, the charter system. We're going to talk about that in greater detail later, but just know that as a part of this conversation, understanding what you want for your schools is integral to what we say. We tell the state what we want for our charter system. Next slide. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this slide either, but I want you to see all the various places we're getting input. Input here in the cluster, in these cluster meetings, hearing from constituents, parents, teachers, students. We are also collecting information through our advisory committees, and there are several advisory committees that are in place, including SPLOS, Special Ed. Our budget committee are also hearing from parents and families. We also have time, this is a formal community meeting, and I've shared, I want people to show up and show out, turn up and turn out for these community meetings, because it's important. We want to hear from you. And so tonight, you guys have done an awesome representation. This is our first community meeting, and I think y'all should give yourselves applause because you turned it out. Okay, cluster planning teams, a small group have gotten together to start the work, to propose some things, but they have not finished the thinking, and so they need your input. Employee feedback, teachers and others have been sharing this work within their staffs and teams, and they're also bringing that to the table. And then finally, the student feedback, that's a process that's kind of in place right now that we're gearing up for, listening to students to hear what are their career interests, what do they want their schools to be like. Next slide. All right, I'd like Sid Baker to talk to you about what is cluster planning real quick.
Hello and good evening, and thank you for being here today. It really means a lot to see all of you here. I am so excited to be the Associate Superintendent working with the Douglas Cluster Schools. I've been engaged with them now for a couple of years, and to watch their energy and excitement around this process is really exciting for me. I'm very proud of the work they've already done, and I look forward to hearing your input as we get into the work deeper. First, I want to explain to you what is cluster planning. We talk about that, and we want to make sure you understand what that is. Our goal is to build stronger schools and stronger clusters around two things. We want a high-quality academic education for every student, pre-K through 12th grade. And we also want to have focused programming. So if it's happening in one of our Douglas schools, it's happening throughout our Douglas schools. And so we want to have some focused programming in place. And how are we going to get to that point? We're going to get there by setting some goals and to have some teams of people, all of you giving us input into what that needs to be, what that needs to look like, and how we want to get there with that. We want to align our cluster, pre-K through 12. We want to have some commonalities that we want all our students to experience and participate in, and we want to have that in place for our students. As you met earlier, we do have a cluster planning team that stood up a few minutes ago. This team is made up of school employees as well as community people and parents. And so they are meeting, trying to put all this together as a proposal for you to gain input from the entire Douglas community. And so what we're trying to do now is to develop our plan in order to better serve our charter system petition that's coming up and have input with that, as well as the future of APS as a whole. So this committee, this planning team that you met earlier, those are your touch points, your contacts. So you can reach out to any of them to have your voice heard as well in this process as we go through it as well. Well, you saw the committee members' names, right? Were they there? There they are. Okay, so if you know any of these people, of course, all the principals are represented, as well as other school employees and community members. And so please reach out to them, give them any input or any feedback that you may have as we move through this process. And this is our team meeting norms. We want three things to happen as we do our cluster planning meetings. Oops. One is we want our meetings to be open. Yes, it's a planning team that is doing work, but the public is invited to attend those meetings. The community is invited to attend those meetings. They are open to everyone to observe. So you are welcome to come and join the meeting as an observer and hear the discussions that are going on within the planning team itself. And if you have feedback, you can certainly, we'll provide opportunity for you to give those kinds of feedback during those times. The second part is that we want it to be documented. There will be a website, and on that website, you will have copies of the minutes of every one of our meetings, times and locations and dates that we will be meeting, so that you can keep up with where we are in this cluster planning process. And the last part is that we'll be collaborative. We want to have input. We want to be respectful of each other's input. We want to use that input to better serve this plan. So those are the three norms that we will have together. And the last frame I have is the timeline. And this timeline is already underway, as you can see. We have, the cluster has already met and planned the draft of the vision and mission and priorities, and you'll hear a little bit more of that in just a few minutes. Right now, we're having our very first community meeting to share where we are and start getting your feedback on the cluster plans, and we will be having those along the way. Then we are also starting to identify specific budget priorities, specific opportunities and partnerships that we can reach out to and start including in our cluster plan. As I said, we will continue community meetings to gather input throughout the time, and then by April or so, we hope to have a draft of our entire academic focus in the Douglas cluster. With your input, with the work of the planning team, we hope to present that to you for feedback around the April time period. And then next year, our goal is to develop the details of the resources and materials and trainings that we need in each of our schools, and also implement our plan as fully as possible. So that's kind of the timeline that we'll be following. Okay? And I will turn it back over to Angela to carry on from here. Thank you again for being here.
Dr. Burks. So Dr. Burks is going to share with you a little bit about some of the things that they highlighted in terms of, they did some pre-thinking, and they are going to share with you a couple of key pieces of information that they wanted to kind of gather some feedback on.
Good afternoon. Again, my name is Tony Lemaire Burks II. I want to thank you for coming out tonight. It's wonderful to see a packed house. We, of course, have spent time working as a cluster, talking through what are our areas of strength, what are some areas that we want to work on, what should we be focusing on in terms of improvement. Lots of things there. We talk about the rich history of this community, the rich history of the schools in this community. We talk about the strong alumni group. We talk about the principals who serve the schools in this community and the desire of these individuals and their teams to improve what we do, to improve the educational outcomes of students. We also talk about kinds of concerns, and these were concerns that were lifted up from various people throughout the weeks and months of us working on this. We talk about the kind of support. Now, I say that we ought to look at parental support in various ways. So for me, the support is if a parent puts her child on a bus and gets that child to school, that is support. That is tremendous support. We look at things like the engineering program. There are people who raise concerns about that being removed from the school. That happened way before many of us were in these positions, but there were concerns about that. And so we wanted to get all of that out, because we know that those are the elephants in the room. And if we don't talk about those, we won't be able to move forward. Does that make sense to everybody? Can I take this? I don't know if it's my next slide, but I certainly, okay, I'm going to have to use this one whenever I get back up.
Okay. So that's just kind of a little piece of information, but I want to now get into the World Cafe. We're going to get started with the first question. So the World Cafe is something that facilitators and trainers use to start a conversation, to engage in a conversation. You're sitting in groups and tables in which you're able to look at somebody else and have conversation. But the idea behind World Cafe is that you really generate input, and that the ideas and the ideas that we all have can solve the problems. So you don't really need outside to do that, but we as a collective body, through brainstorming and sharing ideas, that we have the answers in the room. So we want you to generate ideas. We know you have ideas. You've been thinking about this a lot, and that we want to create those connections with the people that were sitting at the table. So some key norms for you to understand in terms of the cafe etiquette, if you will. We want you to focus on what matters. We want you to really think about different creative and innovative solutions that you can bring to the table. We want you to really speak your mind and heart. We're creating a safe environment where we can have open conversations and dialogue about what we care about most, which is our kids and our schools. We want you to listen to understand. We want you to connect to ideas. And at your table, which I see, I thought that was a drawing. You have markers in front of you, you've got chart paper in front of you, and we want you to doodle and draw your ideas and your concepts. You've got a facilitator at your table, and we want to make sure that you capture the ideas and the conversations that are happening at your table. That's why each table's got some chart paper and markers. We want you to get creative. So it's doodling and drawing is not just for the kids, it's also for us adults too. All right. So there will be several questions in which we'll pause and break, and I'll say, I want you to turn and talk. I want you to have some great conversations, and I want you to get started on some very important questions that we want answers to based off of your perspective. So we're going to get started with the first one. There we go. What makes the Douglas cluster strong? You see in our strategic plan, it's around strong schools, a strong system, a strong staff, and strong students. Our plan is centered on a strengths-based movement with which most of the instructional staff know what that means. But we're trying to start from what's strong instead of from what's wrong. And that's a shift that the superintendent is making with all of us. So I want you to start from there. I want you to engage in some conversations. I'm going to give you 15 minutes. But what's strong about Douglas Cluster? What's strong about Douglas Cluster? Okay, go ahead and get started. If you hear me, clap once. If you hear me, clap 2 times. All right. So I'm going to start back here for a comment or two. I do want you to hear the table conversations. They were so engaging. So right back here.
Thank you, Angela. At our table, we discussed that we have dedicated teachers and staff. And through that dedication, the understanding of the demographics, we have several teachers that have been students in the community, went to the school, and are also teaching at the school. So they really understand that demographic and trying to build the relationships with students. And basically proactive leadership using data. They're using a lot more data within the last few years and making data-driven decisions. And then our cross-cluster planning with the collaboration.
Do you have another table that wants to share? Back here, okay. You can do it.
Well, one of the things that we've said was the principals communicate with each other to stay informed on what is happening in each school. We have strong community support and parents' desire to be involved. We also have a strong alumni presence in the community, meaning that not only with students, alumni here at Douglas, but all of the other schools, we have a lot of alumni in this area who will go to bat at any time. And the communities pool together, and then we have strong and dedicated teachers who are here because they want to be. They're passionate about what they do in these schools.
All right. Yes, I heard some themes. I heard dedicated staff, I heard community, great.
Here we spoke about Usher Collier Elementary, a fantastic best place for your children. I'm a little biased, but here what our principal and our assistant principal, they give us so many opportunities. Our kids are doing coding. We're doing STEM. We're having relationships with Georgia Tech. We have extracurricular activities, and when we're working towards a rounded student, because when they go to college, you could be an A student, but if you're not rounded, that's going to be a deficit. Also, we have Scott at the table, and elementary, and there, the teachers are very dedicated, and they even use their personal resources to get what is necessary for their students. So together, between Usher and Scott, we love our children.
Great, good job. Great job. No, you're great. Lots of positive things, lots of things that are strong in the Douglas cluster. Okay, so Dr. Burks and the other principal facilitator, they're going to review with you. Oh, you're going to go first? Yes. Okay, great. They're going to review with you some of the data from the Douglas cluster and some of their initial thinking in terms of moving forward, some proposed mission, vision, and key priorities.
Everyone, good evening. My name is Gregory Parks. I am the principal of Usher Collier Elementary School, and my faculty members can tell you I can be quite long-winded. I had 5 stories prepared tonight, but I'm going to cut it down to 1 because Angela said we have 2 hours and we have a lot to accomplish. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Would you mind going back to the other slide, the first? What makes the Douglas cluster strong? Well, I'm going to speak to you from our heart tonight. I truly believe that we have the potential to do great things. We have the potential to show the world what our children can do. And we have the potential to believe in each other. And once you believe in something, you come up with a plan and you execute the plan with fidelity. And great things will happen. But as I promised, I will move quickly. Go ahead. What does the data say about our attendance? I'm going to move closer to the screen. If you notice, we have Grove Park to Douglas High School. If you have the attendance of 95%, that equates to every student may miss 1 day a month for the entire school year. If you have 90% or below, you may have every student may miss 1 day every 2 weeks. So we really want to do a good job of making sure our students come to school, because the research states that if students miss days in school, they have a higher probability of dropping out. And we definitely do not want that for our Wonderful students within the Douglas cluster. Go ahead. Now, one thing I really want you to look at, because we're going to have some further discussion when we get into the other charts. Look at the significant drop-off in the 6th grade and the significant drop-off in the 10th and 9th grade. Something is going on there that we can remedy quickly. I will show you an inversely proportional relationship with suspension and attendance. And it's really a quick win we can have immediately to increase our attendance rates. And this is a trend line from 2013, 2014, and this academic year, which is the blue line. You notice that we have a significant improvement over here. Now, I want to share something with you. I'm extremely positive because I had to persist all my life. When I was going through elementary school, I used to stutter profusely. I was almost placed in special education. My mother advocated for me. She said, no, test him, give him an opportunity. So every child deserves a champion. Every child needs to learn how to persist, and you can be a success. But I am moving quickly because I can tell stories. So go ahead. Okay, one story. Now, what's interesting about this story is about my child. She's in high school now. Her name is Mercury. She's 14. This happened 10 years ago. And I had to go to the kindergarten class because my child was a terror in school. And I was a single parent, just got divorced. They called me in. The principal said, Mr. Parks, you need to come and see, because I've been ignoring the phone calls as a parent. And I went there, and I was giving her excuse, well, I'm divorced, I'm working 2 jobs, I'm counting on you all to help me with my child, what's going on? And the principal told me directly, well, Mr. Parks, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. So basically, the principal was holding me accountable for my child. I have to give my child consequences, and I have to give my child tools so they can be a success when they go back to school the next day. So what I did, I found out what my child wanted most. I took away Teddy for a week, and also I gave her tools to go to school the next day to assist the teacher. My child finished her schoolwork very quickly. So therefore, when she started communicating with the teacher, giving her tools for success, she became a wonderful performer in school. As parent, I can identify with you because I have 3 of my own. It is difficult. You only send your best to us. We understand. But still work with us, partner with us. As teachers, I used to be a teacher at the great Benjamin Mays High School. I love Douglas as well. As a teacher, I had to partner with the parent because I wanted to make sure that teach and learn was going on each and every day. I had to partner with my administrator because I'll try to make sure I didn't bring any additional things that I can handle in class to my administrator. That's important to me because I want the best for the child. And I don't want the child to leave. I don't want the child suspended. You need to stay with me. You're going to do great things. As a principal, it's incumbent upon me to make sure I have processes and practices in place, the right teachers in place who love children, who are willing to work together to find solutions instead of suspension. It is difficult, but not impossible, because we have the potential to do great things with our children. So I want you all to bond with me on that, because we have some great students within our cluster. Now, with that being said, let me explain this slide to you. As you can see, Harper Archer all the way down to Usher Collier. But Usher Collier's the lowest, that's not good enough. We want the entire cluster to have low suspension rates because we have the best kids in the world. With that being said, if you see 3 to 0.11. If you have a 1 here, that's the high probability throughout the academic year that every student will have 1 day of suspension in a school. So therefore, these numbers can shrink as we get closer to May if we make some clear remedies to our high suspension rates within each school. So these numbers can shrink before we get to May. Go ahead. Now, if If you remember back on the other slide, I looked at 6th grade and 9th grade, right? So students are being suspended out of school. So therefore, teaching and learning is not going on for that particular child. If we reduce the suspension rate, minimum, I haven't ran the numbers, Mr. Parker, minimum we should have a 2% increase in attendance quickly. If we make some cognizant decisions, how are we going to suspend children and why we're suspending children, holding our assistant principals, academy leaders accountable, and therefore we'll make sure if we will suspend someone, it's a good reason for it. And I promise you, suspensions will drop. Because I looked at the tally, most suspensions, majority, was fighting. And that's nothing more than conflict resolution. Learning how to negotiate, learning how to communicate, learning how to work with your peers in class to come up with solutions. Project-based learning. Go ahead. And this is my last slide because I was moving quickly. If you notice, we have the trend line. It's really comparable to last year. We had a slight decrease in suspensions, and that's a good thing, but we're not satisfied. We want our suspension rate to keep going down, and we want our attendance rate to keep going what? Up. Thank you for your attention. Appreciate you. Next, we have Dr. Tony Burks.
May I take that? So we had 65 people who participated in this, and we realized that there was some confusion about the survey, but nonetheless, we've got some good information. You see there the number of people who participated from different areas. Well, we want to look at these slides. So 60% talk about, let us find something that says the learning approach is designed to develop intellectual, personal, emotional, and social skills. That's a pretty powerful thing, 60% of those who responded. The next, of course, is a focus on the integration of principles, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And then you can see the next category is college preparatory. So for us, it might be to sit down and think, what kind of approach, what kind of signature learning experience can incorporate those three? It might be what can incorporate those two. But that's the kind of conversation that we as a cluster can certainly have. Next, look at this. Again, this is fascinating. Science, technology, and engineering. That comes up. 20% of those who took this survey said that. Education and training. Look at that. Teachers, teacher assistants, folk who want to do the work that we're doing and work on getting gray hair like me. That was supposed to be a joke, but I'm going to stick to my script. I feel like I'm at the Apollo. Information technology. But again, you see, we've got these kinds of things that have surfaced from the survey that you completed. This gives us good information to use as we're having the small group conversations about what we desire for the students in this cluster. We have said it in different ways. The way I say it is, our students are brilliant beyond measure, even when they don't believe they are. They are brilliant beyond measure. One of the things that people don't really stop to do, because sometimes this can be taken the wrong way. This is not about deficit. This is not about negative, but it is important to know what we are working with. That slide up there has all kinds of data points, and I will tell you this. For students who are experiencing poverty, students who experience poverty are more likely to have experiences where they're not getting as much reading. Doesn't mean that people don't read, they're not getting as much. Students who are experiencing poverty are more likely to experience violence. One of our academy leaders sent me a text message a couple of days ago, and it was from a young man who was not in her academy, if I'm remembering correctly, who sent her a text and said, I won't be at school today. My brother was shot. So what does that mean, you're wondering? Why are you bringing it up, Tony Brooks? Because we have to think about this young man at some point is coming back to this school, and what kind of supports do we have in place? So as we're thinking about cluster development, we're thinking about the ideas of what we should do for this cluster, for these schools, for our children, we have to think about the kinds of supports and services that we ought to have present. That's what this data says to me. That's what I'm hoping this data will say to you. Now, people have been asking, so what kind of work have you been doing? So we believe that it's important to see the work. If you look around the room, Starting over here, you see charts of things, words, phrases, ideas, concepts. We've had 2 meetings, one here, one at Scott Elementary School, where we've talked about this whole notion of what is it that we desire for the students? What are the things that we want to work on? We want people to know who weren't present for those meetings that we didn't just sit off in some room as 8, 9, or 3 principals and brainstorm stuff and say, voila, here it is, do. No, we had people from all kinds of places within this to sit down and say, let's think. And we have been expanding that. And we will continue to expand that, because the only way we can get this together is for the great ideas that come out from having groupings like this. So this mission and vision that you see, it's draft. You're wondering, well, where'd that come from? The same process. We sat down and started out talking about the mission and the vision. What is it that the vision, what is it that we desire for the students in this cluster? Where do we see ourselves? The mission is about what are you doing right now. The vision is where do you want to be? It is not etched in stone. We have debated those words left and right, and we believe that in these groupings we'll continue to debate those words left and right so we can finally get something that speaks to what we do. Why is the mission important? The mission is important because as you begin to work on projects, work on initiatives, work on next steps, if the direction is heading this way and all of a sudden somebody throws out something that sends us this way, we can always bring the mission back and say, where should we be pointing? The mission helps guide us to whatever is true north, which is that way for folk who are being really technical. The draft priorities. Again, we've worked as a group to brainstorm things. This started out as a list of about 15 or 20 things, and we kept saying, if we have 15 or 20 things, we will do nothing successfully. And so we've been working diligently to condense that, to come up with 4 things. I believe you have a handout that has the 4 priorities on the back page. And within those priorities, it's on this sheet on the very back. Within those 4 priorities are a couple of initiatives and activities. They're written there for you. We're not going to go through all of the details, but they're there for you to have, to see how they link up and how they could drive what we do.
I appreciate that we are making great time. I do want you to have time to internalize and really think about the priorities that are before you for this Douglas cluster. Do these priorities meet the needs that you see through your lens, through your role as a parent or a staff member? So we've got cluster academic framework, and within cluster academic framework, you've got early learning centers for all 3 and 4-year-olds, project-based learning, consistent cluster level master schedules. Within reading instruction, consistent K-2 reading framework, tools, and resources, so that we build a foundation across all of our schools where all of our kids experience the same things when it comes to reading instruction. Teacher development, so we can continue to make strong teachers and strong instructional delivery. Reading interventions and supports for those kids who really need some extra support. Math instruction. We heard a lot about math instruction. I'm not just hearing it in the Douglas cluster, it's across the board. But math instruction, consistent math, once again, building a strong foundation so all of our kids go through the same experiences to build the same skill set in math. So math framework, tools and resources, teacher development, so they're teaching from the same foundation, and math interventions and support. Now this one got a lot of, I'm not allowed to say that, I'm in a public meeting. This one got a lot of yes ma'am, yes we need this. Strong wraparound services. So what is wraparound services? It's your counselors, your teachers, extra supports in the supporting students that have been through a lot. Lots of wraparound services that can be done with with resources in the school system are partnering with strong resources in the community that do a great job in this area. Through community partnerships, counselors, social workers, attendance support, looking at suspension and how you can decrease that through positive behavior supports, and cluster-wide school-based parent engagement. So now I want you to take the time to think about, have all the priorities been addressed in this cluster? Are there some that should be addressed? So now is your time to turn and talk again. You've heard a lot. I want you to turn and talk with your neighbor. Are there additional priorities that need to be included? Or I want you to talk about the priorities that have been outlined for you. Go ahead, you get 15 minutes. All right, if you will start to wrap up. I'm going to give you one more minute to kind of conclude your thoughts. We're going to have a few groups to share out some great ideas. If you hear me, clap once. If you hear me, clap 2 times. All right, great conversation again. I had some tables that I wanted to talk to. Right here, would you mind sharing what your discussion was?
Okay, our discussion was focused on the whole child. Focus on the whole child approach from elementary to high school. Some children, every child will not go to college, will not enlist in the military. So you have to find an area of interest with each student that you come in contact with. Some children like to cook, some children like fashion. So you have to kind of reach them where they are. Teaching real world skills that will fall under focus under the whole child approach. Have school to family connections. If there's a crisis in a family, the school will reach out. As a matter of fact, at my school, we had a situation with a student where our school came together as a whole to help this family during this difficult time with this child. So that's one way of bridging that gap between the school, the family, and the community. Also, teaching the kids how to resolve their conflicts. I know back in the day, we used to use Success for All, and one piece of Success for All was using a peace path, and have the children to use the I messages, and that's another way that you can kind of help the kids to learn how to resolve their conflicts without fussing or arguing or fighting with one another. Also, you can create a safe place in your classroom for those children that are having that difficult behavior. Just give them a space in your classroom where they can have time to just have time away from everyone else to get themselves together, collect their thoughts, and when they're ready to come back and join the group, they can. Also, you can have the students to role play a particular scenario that may have occurred in your classroom that day to see how they could resolve that issue. Also, you can have teacher-student conferences because a lot of times kids come in, they don't have anyone to talk to in their homes, so you're their next line of communication. So taking that time to listen to them kind of changes their whole perspective and thought and kind of make your relationship a lot better in your classroom. Also, provide services for parents who's having issues with reading, writing, or whatever the situation is in their lives, and just let them know that you're there for them. And it can be through a parent workshop, or you can have individuals to come in to help with certain skills that they lack in.
Thank you. So a lot about conflict resolution, whole child. Good job. All right, you'd like to share?
We like the previous speaker right there. We liked her thoughts on the alternatives. However, what about the ones that have the consistent over and over behavioral problems, which is preventing other students from learning? The teacher is exhausted. is there at the elementary level specifically, I'm not sure about high school, but I work in an elementary level and it is awful. And we would like to see a place. I mean, when I was coming up 45 years ago plus, there were places you could go or have them removed from that classroom to allow for the instructional, so that the teacher can move on and other students who want to, and mainly holding the parents accountable for their children's action. They're sending them out there to us, and yes, they have issues, and we want to teach them, we want them to learn, but there has to be a cutoff point and a place, we believe, to push that, and the priority should list that.
Great, thank you. I think I had one comment over here. I know everybody wants to say a little something, but we're short on time. Hold on. Okay.
All right, so first we said we wanted to utilize businesses and companies as true partnerships and not just sponsorships, because usually we would look at them for just monetary donations, but if we can get them in the classrooms and have them bring those real world applications to the students, that would be awesome. Another thing was to make sure counseling is continuous and can incorporate siblings and parents. It's wonderful to counsel the student, but they have to go home. So it would be wonderful if we can bring in siblings and parents. And also on our sheet, one of the priorities were to verbalize and execute cluster parent embracement philosophies. Unfortunately, under strategies, we didn't feel that there were any real true strategies. They sounded nice, like create a warm and inviting environment, create opportunities for parents, staff, and community to bond, create an environment which welcomes parents. That's not really telling us what's going to happen and what each school will actually do.
Okay. I have time for like one quick comment, and then we've got to move on to the next very important topic.
I'll be brief. One of the things that we added, and this was in addition to what was under student support, is that we have some sort of meaningful parent engagement. And just piggybacking on what the young lady at the other table said, it's kind of vague what's here, but we feel that we should be specific about the kind of support that we provide our parents, so that when our kids get to us in pre-K and in kindergarten, we've closed those gaps and eliminated some of those concerns before they come to the school level. So that can be child development classes and evenings and weekends, adult education, job placement services, things along those lines, so that we can truly engage our parents, make them feel welcome, and give them the tools that they need so that they can work with their students, so that by the time they get to us, we're not seeing those gaps and we're not seeing those social and emotional challenges.
Okay, I'm sorry. I got to move on to the next topic, and I got to get some more input from you. So I'm going to switch topics. These are great ideas. We're coming around to get your sheets of paper, but I need to switch to the next topic, which is around charter system. Because one of the key components around the charter system is empowerment, engagement, and involvement by parents, teachers, and the principal and community partners. So I'm trying to just bring it home. I know a lot of people are like, what is this thing called a charter system? What you just talked about parents being involved, teachers being involved, staff and students coming together to embrace and help at the school, local school level, is one of the key components around the charter system. So to kind of get started, I'm going to show this video. I'm going to show the video. Kathleen's around here somewhere, or they've got it pulled up. The video is 3 minutes. It's from the state. I agree with 80% of what's in the video, but it tells the story of what a charter system is in 3 minutes. So I like the video for that, because it tells you really quick, fast, what it's all about. So that's the reason I want to use the video. There's some parts in it I wouldn't have quite said it that way. So just know it didn't come from me, but it's a helpful tool. Okay, so we're going to switch real quick to talk about the charter system. As we're doing that, the next steps. So we're going to use all the input that you guys shared with us tonight around the cluster planning. The principals and the folks that are sitting on that cluster planning team from your community are going to use all that input and to massage what they had. Tonight you just saw a shell, and you can see how their work has evolved. It's going to evolve even more so given the feedback. And y'all gave some great feedback points in terms of their priorities. So those priorities are going to shift a little bit as they incorporate that. They will start to develop some additional resource requirements and partnership opportunities. They'll start to look at that and the academic program, which Sid talked about just a few minutes ago. And then we're going to see you back here in April to talk about the cluster planning. I want to see all y'all again. I want you to show up and show out like you did tonight, because we're going to have more to show you in April. And I know y'all want to come back and see, so what did y'all really do with my stuff? I want y'all to come back in April to see where it goes, okay? I want you to hold us accountable. All right, so hopefully this video will play and you can hear the sound loud and clear. Okay, so we're working to be a charter system. The main components of a charter system is this idea of you've got folks at the local school level coming together, empowered to make some decisions. That is the core of what we are as a charter system. There are charter systems all around us. Fulton County is the one that's closest to us. Their demographic and makeup looks very similar to Atlanta Public Schools. And I'm going to share with you in terms of some of the changes that have happened in their system. But we're going to talk today primarily around local school governance. So from here till June, we're working on our application to become a charter system. It's something that we have to apply for at the state level. We're having community meetings like tonight, which we're talking about both cluster planning and the charter system work. And we'll be having, as we finalize the details of what that will look like, there will be public hearings, and there'll be some other formal meetings that will be happening. I'll also be reporting out every single board meeting. I will be at the board meetings talking about where we are with the work and giving little updates as to what the design will look like for the charter system. We have not written not one piece of our charter system application, because I'm using meetings like tonight to hear from you, to get feedback on what you want in the charter system. So we're June 30th. We are moving towards an application for June 30th. We've already submitted our letter of intent, and that went in November. It's a long process that involves community involvement, writing an application, getting feedback from principals, listening to the leadership, listening to the board, hearing what they want in terms of the design. It's something that you have to design yourself. You start with a blank sheet of paper, but there's some basic requirements that have to happen if you were to become a charter system. So, what's the key components of a charter system? One, there is a contract between you and the state in terms of a 5-year agreement that you are going to have the charter system in place for 5 years. You're going to do all the things that are outlined in the application for 5 years. There is a commitment that there is going to be leadership in terms of a local school governing team that will provide support to a school, each school across the system, and that you're going to give power and authority to that local school governing team. They are not an advisory board, they're a decision-making body, and we're going to talk about what that means in a minute. And that's very different than what we have today. I like that because in 3 minutes it kind of breaks it down in terms of the key components for a charter system. You saw engaged parents, engaged staff members, really being able to design something that meets the needs for that particular school instead of having something that's standard across the board. So those are some of the key components around the charter system. I'm going to have them to go to my slides. Thank you. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but it's around innovation. It's around empowerment. It's around what y'all were doing tonight. Like if I were to show you a movie video in terms of what does a charter system look like, what we did tonight is exactly what a charter system is all about. Having people come together to start making decisions about the direction for their schools. So school governance means that you've got decision-making authority in terms of personnel decisions, financial decisions, curriculum decisions, resource allocation decisions in terms of the budget, and monitoring the school achievement plan. That's part of the local school governing body's role. And so what's different today, and you're going to see in a slide in just a second, in terms of how does what's the role of that particular team? Okay, hold on there. Clickers. Uh-oh. There we go. So there's a commitment to innovate, thinking about changing the culture at your schools, thinking about changing the direction for your schools is a part of being a charter system. The ability to, in terms of the laws, there are some laws that you're able to waive to bring some innovations to your schools, and we'll talk about that later. There's also, as a part of it, looking at accountability as a team across the system instead of by individual school. That's another important component to this, is that we're all in it together and we're trying to help raise our students in terms of academic achievement. And that there is autonomy and flexibility for each local school. The charter system model, today what we're going to talk about is the local school governing teams and really understanding the roles of those local school governing teams and how it's different than what we have today. And then I also want to get your feedback in terms of how we should structure the charter system teams moving forward. So I talked about this, but one of the key roles for that local school governing team will be selecting the principal. That's required by law. It's not firing the principal. It's only when there is a vacancy, you're at the table helping to make the decision as to who should lead the school. The other important component is that, and we're trying to figure this out right now, and you can imagine, we're a very traditional school system, and this is something that we don't do every day. But we're trying to figure out how do we push money and more resources to schools to decide what to do, so that we in central office get out of it, because we don't know, you know best, because you're closest to the schools, how you could use additional financial resources. So that local school governing team, or LSGT, would have additional discretionary dollars to decide what you want to do with it. Like what I heard over here was around whole child decisions, providing additional resources to parents so that they can help their kids. That may be something that's important for this cluster and what you want to do, but may differ greatly to your neighboring clusters. You also would be at the table to help to determine some of the key curriculum decisions that guide the school improvement plan. And then you would be at the table helping to make decisions around the school improvement plan goals in terms of the direction for your school. Here from the state, in the little colors, are 6 important things that the local school governing team, as a charter system, the composition needs to reflect the diversity of the community. It can't look like what some might envision, but it actually has to represent the diversity of the community. That part's important. The law also says that they have to meet regularly, that they have to comply with open records and open meeting laws, so they can't do it in hiding. The local school governing team also has to play their role or stay in their lane. And so that means that those 5 or 6 things I just discussed, those are the areas that local school governing team stays. That's where they're focused. They're not focused on the hiring and firing of teachers or what happened in the cafeteria, but they're focused on the key things that are going to drive the direction for the school. Substantial autonomy from the local district. That means that the central office can't be in it either. We got to stay in our lane. And we're trying to figure out what exactly that means for Atlanta Public Schools, but that you would be driving the decisions as teachers, as parents, as the principal, and community members. You would be driving the decisions in those areas that I just discussed. And that you would be receiving regular academic updates, operational updates, and financial progress for your school. So that would not be a mystery anymore for those folks that sit on that local governing team. And then if you're sitting on that team, it's also your obligation to share it with your neighbor so that everybody understands what's going on. And then to participate in regular governing council training each year. It's a requirement that if you become a member of that team, because now you've got financial duties, hiring duties, school improvement duties, that you also are trained, right? So many people have asked, what's the difference between what we have right now? I think many of you are, so there's several of you who are local school governing councils right now. So if you see right here now, this is the local school governing council, or LSAC, right now. Here's what the new body would look like under charter system. And then here is the PTA, PTO. And so I want to talk about the differences because people are like, what's the difference? Don't we already have that now? No, you don't. So let's talk about right now. If you are on a local school advisory council, you are an advisory body. You can't make the principal do anything. You don't really have decision making. You kind of guide decisions. You encourage decisions. You bring up, have you thought about this? But people you don't really have to have the ability to act on it. So you advise and make recommendations. In traditional systems, you see local school advisory councils. It's been in law for quite some time now, but they haven't necessarily had any sort of major decision making. And there are just general guidelines, and people kind of get together and kind of have some conversations. In some places, people are meeting regularly, and it looks just like probably the local school governing team in a charter system. But in other places, people are not meeting regularly. So there's not a minimum standards, but as a local school governing team, there are standards. A PTA, PTO, it's more of a support body. It's separate from the local school governing team. It's optional. People don't have to have a PTA or a PTO. And it is a distinct body from the school. So that you don't have to make decisions. You're technically a separate entity. And there are requirements as a PTA or PTO. Under a local school governing team, in a charter system, you'd have voting and decision-making rights in those 5 areas that I just discussed. You would set the strategic direction for your school, and it is mandatory. It must be in place. And actually, you have to outline how that team comes together. In most systems, they're elected. And I'm going to share with you in just a sec. What does that look like? What does the law require? It says that if you're a board member, like Courtney English was here, and I saw Mr. Matt Westmoreland and some other board members. I see Leslie in the back right now. That as an APS board member or the superintendent, they cannot participate on the local school governing teams. That it has to be comprised a majority of parents for every school and community members. That's also a very important point. And that districts must give the ability for those teams to do their work around personnel, financial decisions, resource allocation, curriculum instruction, and school improvement goals. Okay, so Fulton County, our neighboring county next door, they have mostly teams comprised of 10 people that work as that local school governing team for elementary and middle. They have 12 members for high school. And the thing that I want to highlight is that the three of them are parents. They are elected by parents. 2 of them are teachers. They are elected by teachers. 2 are nominated community members. They are nominated by that principal. And 2 are high school students. So students actually sit on their local school governing teams. Now, they don't have voting rights, but they're at the table when it comes to those decisions that I just talked about. Floyd County, which is to our north, which is where Rome, Georgia is, they have a smaller composition. It's 7 members. Of those 7 members, 2 are elected parents, 2 are appointed community members, and 2 are elected staff. So they're either teachers, instructional coaches, the media specialists, etc. Now, Marietta City, which is a little bit to the north of us, they have 7 to 11 members, and it varies, I think, based off of school enrollment. They have 2 elected parents, and now theirs says 2 core content teachers. So I guess if you're not a specialty teacher, you can't fill that role. If you are there's 1 nominated school staff, 1 nominated community member, and there are students that are on like ad hoc committees. So a student might sit on the personnel decision or the financial one or the school improvement plan. They don't sit on the main body, but they sit on the ad hoc committee. Now, one of the things I want you guys to consider is for Douglas Cluster, would you prefer a smaller local school governing team or a larger one? When you think about a larger one, The benefits are that you got lots of people at the table, lots of people to share the work. There are more voices, and there's usually probably more community buy-in because you got more people at the table. Now the cons, if you've ever worked on a group where you had to make major decisions like this, that sometimes too many cooks in the kitchen can be hard to work with, right? It can also mean that your meetings are longer because you got to get to consensus in decision making. And sometimes you're at a stalemate where y'all are just looking at each other, right? So trying to make the decisions, sometimes because you're at a stalemate, it can be hard. Now, if you're smaller, you got tighter cohesion because there's less of you, right? You have the ability to really, the scheduling and the meetings is going to be probably a little bit easier to manage, and then rallying interest and getting people around collective interest is going to be a little easier. But there's less of you to share the work, there's less knowledge at the table, and less capacity for taking on major projects. But I know some of the concerns is that maybe we don't have enough parents that are willing to come to the table, or maybe we don't have enough community partners to come to the table given where we are in the district. So I'm asking your opinion tonight on what do you think is best for Douglas Cluster. Given what you know, given the conversations today, would you prefer a larger or a smaller local school governing team? All right, the autonomy, in terms of a charter system, that's one thing that we would be giving you, would be autonomy to be making those decisions, and that we would be entrusting in you. You become like a little mini board member, if you will, for that school. Because we're entrusting in you to make good, solid decisions about staffing, about the money, the larger money, about the strategic direction for your school. So you're really taking on a lot. And so that means that we need you to represent the public trust by ensuring that we're creating an organizational culture that really carries out strong decision making. Yes. Oh, we got it back. Okay. Okay, great. Awesome. Okay. I think we're almost where I was trying to get to. Okay, so let's start here, just for the sake of time. Here is, well, let's go here. So I talked about some of the structures. Here's what a 7-member composition might look like. And here's some of the, we've floated this idea with our principals, our expanded cabinet, some of our central office. We've started having this conversation, so we're bringing the conversation to you today. And Dr. Christopher really wants to know your opinion as to the composition of these local school governing teams. So here's one where it's a 7-member team, and then you're starting to see some of the key areas that need to be outlined. Their terms might be a 2-year term, but maybe, and the maximum would be doing 2 terms, so that would be 4 years in total. And that members could be removed, right? We would probably have some sort of etiquette, and they've got to follow the training that's been outlined. Now, I want to show you kind of where we are. This has been through about 300 people's hands to date. And I tried to show kind of the consensus in terms of where we're moving towards for a possible local school governing team. And this is where I want your opinion on. So we're looking at 9 members, the principal, likely non-voting member, the parents, 4 parents, 3 teachers elected by teachers, parents elected by parents, 2 community members nominated by the principal. For the high school, we're looking at a student serving as a non-voting member at both high school and middle school, and that the principal would work with the LSGT chair, which would be comprised of somebody from this group, on agenda setting. The terms would look like 2-year terms with a maximum of 2-year terms with a maximum of 2 years, and then they would probably be some kind of staggered terms. So now's your time to turn and talk. I want you, I know I gave y'all a lot, I know it's a lot. I'm gonna come back in April with some more, but the composition, I want you to think about your composition today in terms of your local school government? If you don't know, it's okay. But given what you know about your school, what would you want? How will the proposed local school governing teams drive empowerment, engagement, conversation, support at your local school? And I want you to chart that on your paper. So I want you to think about, how will the proposed local school governing team structure drive empowerment, engagement at our local schools? Okay, go ahead and turn and talk. Okay, if I could get your attention, as a good teacher, sometimes the lesson plan didn't meet the students' needs, and you have to change on the fly. So we're about to change on the fly for just a second. I'm going to just reword this question just a hair because I do think it's a little confusing. Let me ask the question a different way. What will the LSGT, the local school governing team, what will it mean for you at your school, given what you just learned? Does that help? The people said no. Okay, what will given this new model, what will this mean for you at your school? What will this mean for you at your school? This model.
What can it do for me?
What can it do for you? What can this do for you? What can this do for you? Awesome. If you hear me, clap once. If you hear me, clap 2 times. If you hear me, clap 3 times. Y'all know I like to say that. I was a little first grade teacher, and I used to do that with my kids all the time. Okay. I want to quickly turn to, I'm going to make some introductions in a minute, too. Some other people came in the room. I wanted this table to share what they thought in terms of what will the LSGT or the local school governing team do for them at their school.
A few of the positives we talked about was it would increase voice. It would have an increase in parental involvement and responsibility. We thought it would increase the community involvement and awareness. It would also help to vet decision making at the school level. It would also increase transparency with the decisions that were being made at the school.
Good job. Anybody else have some thoughts they want to share in terms of what this will mean for you? Was that a good, okay, over here?
So what we talked about was, we had some questions as well as suggestions.
Yeah.
So I'll start with the questions first. We know that our parents are in need of educational support. How can we implement with fidelity when we know that they have certain kind of deficiencies? Based on the cluster data we saw, knowing, make sure we have strong candidates for that. And then secondly, we talked about maybe something we could do to drive it would be centralized templates that LSTGs or LSGTs can modify or approve as necessary for the school.
So I'm going to pick on David because he's my friend. And we're going to turn this around and we're going to say, instead of that question, it means for your school that you're going to really have to come up with a plan for educating and informing your parents.
All righty then. Okay, good. There's 4 minutes on the clock. I do want to highlight, and then I'm going to close it out. I saw Leslie Grant was here, another board member. Oh, there she is. Yeah, there she is. And Carlton Jenkins, who is our new Chief Academic Officer, he was around here. I just saw him. Did he just go around the corner? He was just here. If he walks back in the room, y'all will see him there too. And then I also want to highlight, for all your principals, they showed out in their black and gold for y'all tonight, showing unity for the Douglas cluster. Principals, stand up. Wearing their mighty Astro color, building that pride for the mighty Astros. All right, I just wanted to highlight that too. Okay, because that's part of what we're doing here, right? We want our little kids who are in first grade at the various elementary schools saying, I want to wear my black and gold. Yeah. All right. You got to train them up. You got to train them up. That's what I say. Okay. I'm still not clicking. I don't know. Can you, I think something's going on with the machine. Okay, here's your exit ticket. That's what we call it. When you're exiting the meeting, I have one last activity for you to do as you're leaving out. I want to know your opinion, and your dot is a vote. Your dot is a vote, which is why you received a dot. When you are walking out, and this is very important, it's just like a real election, we want to see your dots. And your dots are color-coded to who you are. So I don't know what the color codes are, but if you're a school instructional staff, you received one color. If you're a community member, you received another color. And there's people that are on the local school governing teams, you received a different color. You're going to come over, and there's multiple charts. There's one here, those colored laminated charts. There's one right there where Travis is, and there's one back there where Dr. Jenkins is in the corner where you're going to place your dot. Raise your hand, Dr. Jenkins. I called your name, and people were looking for you. Say, hey. All right, so you're going to place your dot. You're going to have 3 things you get to vote on. 3. 1, we want to know which size you prefer given some of the conversation. Do you want a smaller local school governing team, a mid-sized local governing team, or a large governing team? You place your dot on your choice. You only get one dot, one choice. Then your second vote is for whether, thank you. Oh wait, that's not it. It's this one. That you agree that the principal and LSGT chair will collaborate on the agenda setting process. And then I also want you to give us some idea, do you agree with our proposal for 2-year terms followed by 2-year terms with a maximum of 2 terms? So if you were to serve, it would be for 2 years, and you could only serve for a maximum of 2 terms or 4 years in total. So if you agree with that, put your dot on the agree side. If you disagree, put it on the other side, and we'll have an idea of kind of your thoughts. So that's what I want you to do when you get up and you're leaving the meeting. Please place your dot on one of those 3 places. The final thing that I need, Dr. Anderson is here. She's been working hard over here as a facilitator. Linda Anderson, who's a part of our teaching and learning department. She's the head of our teaching and learning department. There is a survey. We always ask in the survey. Thank you. There's a survey. If you will fill in the survey, if you've got questions or comments and you need to let us know, there is a survey on your table, and you can just drop that off at the check-in table. All right, I want to thank you all. Give yourselves a round of applause for an awesome night. Thank you so much for a lot of your hard work and input. It was a great, great meeting.